start the sessions on complications.
Dr. Ajay, maybe we can wind up in another 20 minutes. Is that okay?
Yes, no problem. So going straight away to the first case of the session, complications are part of surgery. Let us say, in spite of years of hard work, our efforts go waste due to factors beyond our own control. Years of practice, still complications. Sometimes you get away with them lightly, sometimes you do not get away with them lightly. So, with that, so a mother to son ABO incompatible kidney transplant was done. It is a mother to son ABO incompatible kidney transplant, 3/6 HLA match. By the time ureteric anastomosis was completed, kidney became blotchy and pale, oliguric. So, Professor Anish Srivastav sir, what are the possibilities? Anish sir, are you there?
Yes, Ajay, thanks for the invitation. And in a situation like this, we also need to look at whether it is turgid enough or it was soft.
It is turgid and vessels are patent at least to palpation on by finger.
By
and
finger.
Intraoperative vascular digital Doppler says artery and vein are patent.
Okay, so after the clamps were released,
there was brisk diuresis and the kidney was perfused very nicely.
So at what point was the Doppler done?
After we saw this blotchy and pale kidney.
So, and this was noticed within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or
say 15 minutes by the time we finished ureteric anastomosis.
Okay, so well, in that case, it looks more like some kind of a severe acute rejection or hyperacute rejection, which is one of the. I mean, I'll keep that as the first possibility. Looking at the entire set of circumstances and the fact that this is an ABO incompatible transplant, and I'm sure that 15 days of immunosuppression or the protocol, everything was done properly. What were the titers like at the end?
Sir, his HLA and single antigen bead assay was negative and titers were 1:4 both.
1:4. Okay, so this is, I think I would say, still I have to keep this possibility, because the only other condition where you see this kind of kidney is usually immediately after the clamp release. One, when there is some technical flaw with the arterial anastomosis and the flow is not good, or and in that case the kidney is bluish and patchy like this, but it has a pinkish hue as well.
Yes.
Some pinkish hue, and it will be soft, right?
So it is not soft, it is firm.
Yeah. No, I'm just telling the differential diagnosis. If there was an issue with the arterial anastomosis, if there is an issue with the venous anastomosis, then the picture is little opposite. Kidney becomes tense and turgid, and then after some time, it shows the patches, blotchy patches and blue patches like this, and there may be some areas of hemorrhage also because of the venous hypertension, the capsular rupture, and some bleeding occurs.
Okay, so, right, sir.
Right. So, but here it appears that kidney doesn't have an increased turgidity, or it has not become very hard. So that rules out the any kind of venous
Sir,
anastomotic
vessels are
problem or
absolutely all right.
yeah,
Vessels
and
are absolutely all right.
that's what. See, despite that, we have to Doppler. Sometimes it will show you good blood flow of the artery, especially. But still, we have seen that there can be a compromise. So
Okay,
if
sir. Right,
it
sir.
comes to differential diagnosis, I think I would keep the first differential diagnosis as a hyperacute kind of rejection.
Okay, right, sir. Thank you very much. Vikas, what will you do?
Sir, I need to confirm the vascularity by Doppler first before doing anything.
Sir, Doppler says that artery, vein are absolutely normal, Vikas.
So once the artery and veins are absolutely normal, take a biopsy then.
Why not do a graft nephrectomy straight away?
No, biopsy.
Okay.
If
Biopsy and closure?
Biopsy and closure, sir.
Okay, biopsy and closure was done. Is there any other intraoperative investigation apart from Doppler which can be done here?
I don't think so. Anything is going to help, sir.
Should a titer be sent again right away?
You can send it, but
Won't change the disease.
Yes. So once ensuring that the blood supply is good, my vascularity is absolutely fine, I'll take a biopsy and close.
Okay. So this is the true cut biopsy of the graft. Thrombus obliterating the feeding arterioles. Jamal, what next? We have done plasma exchanges, no response. He remains anuric.
This graft has to come out. There's no question about it. There has been a hyperacute event, either due to the ABO incompatibility or otherwise. It doesn't seem to be much salvage anymore.
Okay. So this patient was taken up for graft nephrectomy. We have done graft nephrectomy, and this is the histopathology. Coagulative necrosis with intraglomerular thrombi. So that confirms the diagnosis of hyperacute rejection. So now my next question is to Dr. Rajiva Lochna. Is she here?
Yes, sir.
So in spite of 3/6 HLA match, titers 1:4, adequate desensitization, even then, why hyperacute rejection?
So there are some of the, as I was saying, that there can be eplect mismatches which may be there, which is a newer concept in anti-HLA antibodies, where there may be sharing some domains where these are called as CREGs. These CREG domains may be the ones which are there where you, even though you have a 3/6 match, there may be these small eplect mismatches which may have caused a hyperacute rejection. The other is the non-HLA antibodies.
Exactly.
Though a minor role, they can also again cause hyperacute rejection at times. We have seen patients with no DSAs at all who still can have a major rejection immediately or during the immediate post-transplant period.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. Is Nitesh here? Nitesh? Dr. Nitesh?
Nitesh has not joined, sir.
Okay, so back to Professor Anish. What would you explain to the family and the patient?
Well, this is something which, in cases of ABO incompatible, we already explained. We already explained the higher chances of this kind of situation which one might encounter. So, because whenever there is a compatible transplant, then we of course sound an alarm, but not to the extent when we are going for ABO incompatible. So generally one thing is that the family is in such circumstances. It has happened, we have done about 200 now. It happened only in one case like this. And in another case, it was 4 weeks later. So we had 2 graft nephrectomies. And in one case, it exactly happened the same way as you are showing the pictures.
Okay.
So
yes, sir. Sir, is there any way to predict, you and then Dr. Rajiva Lochna, is there any way to predict this hyperacute rejection?
Well, the titers before the
Normal,
transplant.
1:4.
Yeah. So these are the predictors. She has actually already mentioned that besides the blood group issues, there could be problems with the HLA, anti-HLA antibodies and non-HLA antibodies. So
So we do not measure those.
yeah, we do
anti-HLA
not actually measure those. So in a day-to-day, am I right?
Dr.
Dr.
Rajiva,
Rajiva.
Our
Yes, sir.
understanding of
Yes.
we
immunology
do not,
very
is there any way to predict this hyperacute rejection?
Well, sir, we do see the number of risk factors which are there. I didn't follow it. Was this patient female or had any other sensitizing factors other than an ABO incompatible transplant?
Mother to son, well matched, first transplant, no blood transfusions.
So, well, sir, we have also seen a lot of these mother to son transplants where we have a good haplo match. This is, I'm not even talking about an ABO incompatible. So, I think we have, there is a fair amount of areas which are still unexplored. Where we
Unexplored.
Still,
That's right. Correct. You have hit the nail on the head. Unexplored. We do not know
Right.
some things.
Our understanding of immunology is very limited actually.
Yes, yes. Vikas, good you that came over. Can he undergo another KT if he has a donor or a cadaveric donor?
So the chances he can definitely take an attempt with a cadaver donor, but again, we'll have to explain that something like this can happen again. So with proper understanding, consent and counseling, if he wants to go ahead, he should be given a chance.
Okay, thank you. Jamal, what are your tips and tricks for graft nephrectomy? What challenges do you expect in this situation?
Right. So there are basically two kinds of graft nephrectomy: an early graft nephrectomy and a late graft nephrectomy. Right now,
Yes.
an early graft nephrectomy, like on table or after a couple of days, is a fairly straightforward operation because you open up and everything's just the way you left it. The only couple of tips I'd like to give here is that don't try to remove all the vascular tissue by undoing the anastomosis and then reconstructing, because you're not going to do it. You're going to end up with stenosis of these vessels. Tie off the artery. There was a time when we thought, because it's foreign tissue, it's been rejected, we're going to have to remove the artery. So we used to dismantle the anastomosis, take out the thing, leave a big gap in the thing, and then try to either primarily close it or close it with by other means. So the only hint I'd like to give in an early graft nephrectomy is just tie off the artery and don't attempt to remove the tissue that was used for anastomosis. For the vein, you may dismantle it and close it because the vein is capacious and you'll be able to close it the way I think that you've shown it in this picture. Doing a graft nephrectomy of a graft that is of a chronically lost graft is a different matter altogether. The vessels are densely adherent. This is a more difficult and a more dangerous operation. It should be done in the form of a subcapsular nephrectomy, in which the original incision is opened, the kidney is dissected in the subcapsular plane, then the capsule is reopened near the hilum, and the dissection is not on the iliac vessels near the anastomosis, but deep within the hilum where multiple branches have to be individually identified and ligated. In a chronic graft nephrectomy, if you see the iliac vessels, you're in trouble.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamal. We straight away move to the next case. So this was an accidental transection of ureter at the level of UP junction while doing living donor retrieval. We did the vascular anastomosis because we cannot give up these grafts just because ureter is not there. It is brisk diuresis, gush of urine. What next? Professor Anish, how did this happen?
Yeah, I think this must have happened. When was it realized? Was it realized at the time of bench most of the times?
It was realized during living donor nephrectomy there itself.
Okay. So anyway, so we have a good amount of pelvis at least there, and then we can use the native ureter and join the two, like what we do in a pyeloplasty. So that is one of the options here.
Vikas, a similar situation
Yes.
in a living donor nephrectomy, the ureter got not transected, but it was perforated.
Mhm.
So How to prevent this complication, Vikas?
Sir, this is laparoscopically. I don't think this is, nowadays we actually take up the ureter gonadal vein complex on the left side together. So ureter is never exposed alone. So this complication is very rare while doing a laparoscopic gonadal.
Yeah, I understand that this is rare, but this has happened at our hands.
So if this has happened, sir, you identify this, and probably I will sacrifice the lower part of the ureter and do a ureterostomy, sir. I will not try to repair it here and do a ureterostomy down.
So precisely, you have why don't you close it over a stent and use the same ureter rather than using this native ureter? Why?
Sir, because there is a chances of stenosis, and if you repair it, I do not want to take a chance in this ureter which already has a anastomosis below, and this also if goes into a problem, patient will have a dual issues. So my take for this will be a clear-cut take. I will excise the lower part of the ureter, do a ureterostomy, sir, with a native ureter.
Okay. Dr. Jamal, your tips and tricks for doing native ureter to graft pelvis anastomosis, end to end to side, side to end. What, when?
Right. So one thing I'd like to say is going back to your first case, which you just have like a centimeter or so of ureter. I have been in that situation once, and one thing that I really think helped a lot when we tackled it was to transplant the kidney upside down. Now, the reason for this is that as you go towards the bladder and you go down, the ureter diverges away from the iliac vessels. Whereas as you move higher up, the ureter comes closer, and finally crosses the vessels. So if you transplant it upside down, you actually have your graft short ureter sitting on the native ureter. And you have to do minimum dissection mobilization to implant it there. So that's just one input I'd like to give. Otherwise, even if whether you do it straight or upside down, the main thing is to dissect the native ureter enough to bring it to the short ureter while maintaining vascularity. So just gentle dissection, don't divide vessels as far as possible, and then just do an anastomosis with interrupted suture, do it over a DJ stent.
Okay, right. Professor Anish, what happens to the native kidney whose ureter has been tied off suddenly for anastomosing it to the graft pelvis?
Well, generally, nothing would happen because we have done quite a few, maybe more than 10, and we have always tied, the upper end of the native ureter, because unless there was a big hydronephrotic kidney, which might sometimes turn into an infected hydronephrosis. Otherwise, all these small kidneys, they are anyway atretic, and with CIN and all, they go atrophy in due course of time with hardly any outputs.
Okay.
And
sir,
they don't trouble.
Can a refluxing ureter be used for rescuing this complication?
A refluxing ureter, generally, you suspect a refluxing ureter when there is a hydroureteronephrosis on the initial ultrasound of the recipient.
Say a known case of reflux who has come to you for transplant and developed this complication. Can his ureter be used for this rescue surgery?
Yeah, I think it can be used, because if we look at the philosophy of our own the Le Grégoire anastomosis, 90% of the ureters are refluxing. Okay. So sterile reflux, it doesn't harm, and I think we can use it. Yeah.
So Jamal, what if ipsilateral native ureter is not available? Okay, Vikas, what if ipsilateral native ureter is not available?
The fashion a Boari, sir.
Okay, right. So if a bladder capacity is normal, you can easily fashion a Boari and use that in this situation. Okay, we'll move on to the next case. A uneventful kidney transplant was done. 12 hours post-transplant, that recipient has oliguria. What would you do, Vikas? Now, how will you investigate? This patient has uneventful transplant. He was diuresing 1 liter per hour. At 12 hours, decreasing urine output. Now, what next?
Oliguria 12 are post KTP.
Yes.
you need to, look at the blood pressures, what is the mean pressure he is maintaining.
Normal.
Everything, if everything is normal, I'll give a fluid bolus once. Maybe
Given no response, catheter is also not blocked.
if everything of that is ruled out, the first thing I'm going to get it is a Doppler then, sir.
Okay. Doppler shows excellent perfusion of the kidney,
Hmm.
but there is mild hydronephrosis and hydroureter till the end of the graft ureter.
And what about the bladder is empty?
Bladder is empty.
And you don't put in a stent, sir.
No,
This is non-standard anastomosis.
no.
Sir, if it is a non-standard anastomosis with these findings, probably I'm dealing with what is probably a ureteric issue. So in that case, I have to either go in and put in a PCN, sir.
See, this is why do you want to do PCN? Because this is just 12 hours. Why not go in again, put a stent or explore straight away?
That is also can be done, but that is also yes, that is also an option, sir. Yes, agree.
Okay. Professor Anish, what are the other causes of such oliguria so early post-transplant?
See, in the scenario which we have discussed and come so far, one of the possibilities could be a blood clot which is sitting there, and if there was a stone in the donor kidney, that could be one of the reasons at this point of time. Sometimes if this, because you are very categorically saying about the hydroureter nephrosis.
Yes.
Sometimes we have seen there is no hydroureter nephrosis. Vessels are perfectly normal, everything else is normal. Then we also look at the rewarm ischemia time. That means what was the anastomosis time?
Sir, uneventful, absolutely uneventful surgery.
Okay. So if everything, because sometimes a situation like a partial ATN is also one of the possibilities. Now, on the ultrasound, if the graft is absolutely normal,
yeah,
I am thinking about just even a faint possibility of a subcapsular hematoma-like condition.
There is no subcapsular hematoma.
Yeah, or a page kind of kidney. Sometimes there is a compartment syndrome, but generally those things, the compartment syndrome is when the kidney gets compressed between the anterior abdominal wall and the limited retroperitoneal space. But generally they would have, the things or the events would happen much early. This is 12 hours. So, and then with hydroureter nephrosis. So that is.
So what would you do? What would you do, sir?
Putting a stent in such situation
May be difficult.
because is more practically more difficult, technically also difficult. Although we have flexible scope, this and that, but you have done it's a raw anastomosis there. I would go with Jamal and do a PCN. If everything else I would push to the corner, you say everything is normal, I would think about a PCN.
Jamal, how easy or difficult you have found to put in a stent in the graft?
You mean retrograde?
Yes.
Okay, so I have attempted a few times and I always find it difficult. I think there are two reasons for this. Either we make we're very particular about making a long tunnel because we're worried about. So I think, how difficult it is to pass a stent depends on, how long you make your tunnel. I've seen units where tunnels are really very short, and probably in such reimplants, it would be easier to pass a stent. Secondly, when you're trying to pass a stent, it's usually because there is some stenosis or something. So in short, I don't have much experience. If I feel that a kidney needs deobstruction, I would almost go directly for PCN rather than attempt a retrograde stenting.
Okay, I'll tell you what we have done, but we did a CT scan.
And this situation that you've given until now, I don't know what your CT scan is going to show.
I've been listening to the discussion. Can I just also say something?
Please, sir.
So I think you're dealing with a tunnel hematoma. Sorry, sir. Can I just? I think
I'm a bit concerned about early PCN immediately after transplant. You said this is within 12 hours.
12 hours.
So, there are the chances of having a hematoma post, PCN is also very high in these kind of kidneys so early. Because you have to dilate the tract, there's time spent, it's an early graft. So I would just go in again and look if there's a actual obstructive cause to it, then I would go in again and tackle that cause. If that's my doubt.
So Professor
ready for
Shroff,
that.
you won't advise attempt of stenting?
Stenting can be tried. It is a female patient, be easier to stent than a male patient. A male patient, unless you planned your graft, urate in such a way that you positioned it well, then that's possible. Again, as Dr. Anish said, it's an early, fresh anastomosis, fresh sutures, healing has not happened, and putting a stent can be a little dangerous in that situation. But in a female patient, I may just give it an attempt before I actually open the patient again. But PCN, I am a little diffident about it, a little bit worried.
Okay, let us see the CT scan.
Dr. Ajay, I just add to that. I would not ever put a PCN in an acute situation. When I said I was talking about, a chronically obstructed ureter,
Okay.
probably I think the diagnosis here, if I had to hazard, would be a tunnel hematoma. We have a small spurter within the tunnel, but I'm sure you have something interesting to show us in the CT.
Okay, so this seems like a tunnel hematoma and there is graft hydronephrosis. Let us see the CT scan in detail. So this is a tunnel hematoma and graft hydronephrosis.
Ajay, I'll have to unfortunately leave another. My lecture is there in Nuts of Sark midterm meeting at 6:45. So,
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank-
Bye bye. So
Bye,
Professor
bye.
Shroff has come in to help us.
I'm running 2 sessions simultaneously too.
Okay. Thank you. But
So
it is
Jamal,
that
this is the tunnel hematoma. So we tried to put in a stent, but we could not stent him. So we straight away explored him. So there was a hematoma within the detrusor tunnel. We evacuated it. There was a big vein by the side of the ureter which was bleeding profusely. Unfortunately, it was not bleeding at the time of primary surgery. So we
Right.
evacuated this hematoma, tied off that vein, undid the anastomosis, stented and anastomosed again.
So one reason to put a stent sometimes was there.
Yes, sir.
Routine,
I agree
routine.
with you.
Routine.
This is one of the cases where
So my boss in England used to say that stent the patient, you sleep better.
okay, sir.
This advice is very simple.
So Ajay,
So-
I just like to say, again, we don't stent, and in my career, I've seen one of these till now. I've seen a stent, tunnel hematoma. One thing that I do, and again, people frown at it because we have this culture that, we're really supposed to preserve every scrap of tissue on the ureter, is that I bear the periureteric vessels of the 2 or 2.5 centimeters that go into the tunnel. And I tie the small arteries and veins there. That does not compromise the tip of your ureter, and yet you don't have that periureteric tissue which may be harboring a time bomb like this, which was in spasm and opened up a few hours later and created your hematoma.
Okay. Vikas,
Sir.
would stent have avoided this complication?
Sir, yes, definitely, sir. This exploration would have been avoided. This vein probably would have bled and stopped after some time. But this re-exploration, I think, could have been avoided by stent.
Okay. Suppose I am successful in putting in a stent, Vikas,
Okay, from below.
from below.
Hmm.
Would that be the end of the story, or he will come back again after stent removal?
I think it would have solved your problem, sir.
Okay. When would you like to remove the stent? I have put in stent now by open method.
So 3 weeks.
Okay. So that answers most of the questions in this case. So, Professor Anish or Professor Sunil Shroff. Dr. Shroff, you are there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sir,
How long?
21 years young lady, father to daughter, uneventful, absolutely uneventful surgery. She was stented because the surgery was not done in my unit, it was done at another center. Stented anterior ureteroneocystostomy. On 12th postoperative day, there was a leak right from the wound. Now I have been called, or you have been called in another center for second opinion on further management. how would you confirm whether the leak or that fluid is urine or lymph or what?
The creatinine, at that and see what's the value of creatinine of the fluid. That'll give you indication whether it's urine or blood. I mean, from serum, sorry.
Okay, so it was confirmed to be urine. Now she
Yeah.
has fever and chills, and TLC is 18,000.
Sorry? Yeah, okay.
So now she has fever and chills, and her TLC is 18,000. What next?
Well, the simplest thing to do is, of course, get a culture done and then start some antibiotics.
All that done. Culture sent. She is still
And
leaking
this-
urine from the
Yeah,
main wound.
this is settle down with a little bit of fever and then put a catheter first and see if the leak comes down. I would like to try and, make this situation from acute to a more easily manageable situation first. That will be
Like
my
what?
put a catheter first and see whether the leak will come down.
So
And
this is massive leak. It has not gone down with catheter.
well, then you have no choice. You have to re-explore.
PCN, Jamal, PCN, nephrostomy, Vikas, any other option?
You're saying, it's a massive leak. So
But I
you
don't
miss
think
it.
I don't think there will be any hydronephrosis to puncture and put in the PCN in the graft this time. Because such a
Retrograde stenting, acha, stent to high already. So now let us see the CT scan. So this is a plain.
That's why, good training is very important of these people who do such transplants.
So this is plain CT scan. This is a plain CT scan. And this is a CT cystogram, not intravenous urography. This is CT cystogram. Shows massive leak.
ऊपर से आ रहा है नीचे से आ रहा है do that again.
So leak is somewhere here.
Yeah, low down. 'Suture सब निकल गया है.
12th post-operative day around discharge. Sutures नहीं निकला है.
I know what I meant is the ureteric sutures probably have given way. It's like
Or else,
So-
the
so-
ureter has, the lower ureter has
necrose.
Yeah.
Necrose or something. Yeah.
So Jamal, how would you counsel the surgeon who has operated this patient? He says periurethral catheter for 3 weeks and she will be all right. What do you say about that?
Tell them absolutely not. The leak is above the level of the bladder. Either the ureter, probably the ureter has gone at a certain level, possibly at the reimplant, and the most likely reason is a vascular compromise of the ureter, which is either sloughed off completely or has, a healing has not taken place. So apart from exploring, I wouldn't counsel anything.
Okay. So there is additional complication in this patient. Her original disease had been vesico-ureteric reflux here. So you have to go in with this in mind. Would you mind using this ureter if that comes to that?
Yeah, I would not prefer to use a refluxing ureter. It's a fairly healthy looking bladder, possibly a Boari flap. I mean, depending on the finding, if I had a short length of ureter pelvis, possibly I'd rather use a Boari flap than use a refluxing ureter. In a desperate situation where the bladder is not coming up and nothing else is possible, one might be forced to, but I would not like to. However, having said that, it's a fairly low grade reflux. If one had to do it, later on use deflux or something to convert this refluxing ureter into a non-refluxing ureter.
Okay, right. Good suggestion, Jamal. Now we opened her and we could not find any obvious site for leak from the detrusor tunnel or ureter. The ureter was healthy. It had not sloughed off. So we opened the detrusor tunnel. So this is detrusor, this is mucosa. And there was a big hole some few millimeters away from the anastomotic sites, and there was a big hole from the where the urine was leaking. Professor Shroff, how common or how rare is this, and how have you ever seen something like this?
No, honestly not, because this is probably a diatonic burn or something like that. After 12
Exactly.
days, this happened. So some kind of a inadvertent diathermy burn in the area of bladder, leading necrosis and leak. Very unusual, but in a way good because you don't have to dismantle the ureter here. All you have to concentrate is on your efforts to make sure that leak, is closed properly. It's fresh bladder margins, and that way you will get away.
Sir, this is a cautery hole. How
Yes,
can
I
you
know.
ensure that it won't expand in say next 7 days more?
No, you have to close it after flushing the bladder. Making sure that there is nice oozing kind of bladder mucosa before you close it.
How will you close this mucosa, sir? It will go on tearing.
Mucosa where you're talking about? Hang on, wait. This is at another area which this is not in the tunnel, is it? It is away from the tunnel.
No, sir. It is in the tunnel.
Oh, I
It is
see.
pure. This is.
Then you have to choose another site and do the whole thing in another area, and close this area separately.
Okay, so we undid this anastomosis, closed this detrusor incision, and did the anastomosis again at another site. So, Vikas, what are the tips to do a successful anterior neo-ureterous cystostomy?
I just want to ask one more thing, guys. When you do this Lick-Greger type of anastomosis, you actually denude the mucosa so much. Do you routinely do this?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Because to
I
be
have
honest,
shown my video. I have shown
I know.
my video.
I wasn't there for your video. Anyway, we can have another discussion on that.
I also do a fairly extensive mobilization of the mucosa.
Sorry?
I also do a fairly extensive mobilization of the mucosa.
To avoid such complication like you had shown in your videos, I had seen you using the scissors instead of cautery. So that is
Yes.
an important step. So 2 steps to avoid this complication is to use less of cautery. Try to use. I usually use that. What do you call it?
Peanut.
Rubber pusher, peanut. I usually use a peanut to separate the mucosa from the detrusor. And you have used in your video, you have used scissors. So I think both the ways are equally good and they can avoid such cautery-related complications in detrusor tunnels.
So, Vikas, in general, tell us what are the tips to do a good anterior ureteroneal cystostomy without ending up in complications?
So it has to be a spatulated anastomosis. You could do good spatulation of the ureter, and good tunnel has to be created. And after that, it has to be a anastomosis. I usually use a continuous anastomosis, and avoid using cautery as we just discussed. And after the tunnel that you are creating it should not be a very tight tunnel. It should be a snugly fitting tunnel, and whatever small vessel that you are encountering, as Dr. Jamal clearly said, around 2 to 2.5 centimeter the ureter can be bared and small vessels can be coagulated, sir. If you do all these steps, I think the ureter complications can be avoided.
What instructions or what suggestions or what do you expect from your friend who is doing kidney retrieval to avoid such complications?
Sir, it is while retrieving, he should go down up to as low as possible to retrieve the ureter. Just don't go and cut the ureter at near the lower pole or above the iliac vessel. Try to go up to as down as possible and retrieve the entire length of the ureter to avoid such complications.
In the classical Lick-Greger, which we do, Jay and Vikas and Jamal, we don't mobilize it so much, the mucosa. We do. I mean, we do separate. We do, of course, do it. We cut the detrusor. We see the mucosa, and about 2 centimeters to 2.5 centimeters of mucosa, and then at the foot end, we make the hole and do a spatulated anastomosis and close the detrusor very loosely around the ureter without having to worry too much about tunneling and so on. This is what we have done forever. So the chance of actually finding so much of mucosa laterally is a little unusual as far as I think. And I don't follow this technique, so I've never seen this before.
Okay. Professor Shroff, how fastidious you are about taking out the gonadal vein along with the ureter?
I mean, taking out the gonadal. It is there, you tie it.
No. The length of gonadal vein you take out with the ureter, or you separate the gonadal vein and ureter and
No,
then.
it usually comes together for me.
Okay.
What about
I
you
must-
guys?
Okay. So I must inform about this patient that the team which had originally operated upon this patient wanted to conserve this complication. So unfortunately, this patient landed up in sepsis, and she was back on dialysis because after severe bone marrow suppression due to MMF and valganciclovir, her immunosuppression had to be tapered, and she had antibody-mediated rejection. She is now back on dialysis.
You mean to say you've never explored, sir?
No, she has been explored. This was the exploratory finding.
Okay, and then what happened exactly?
See, it. Oh, अरे क्या हो गया यार ये? Are you there, Vikas?
Sir, I'm there, sir. All of us are here, sir.
Yeah, we can see you, Dr. Ajay.
No, my presentation has suddenly disappeared.
Yes, we can't see the presentation.
You can
Just a
see
second.
your desktop. You can see your desktop, so you're still sharing.
Just a second.
I have a small announcement. We had MCQs displayed during the whole program, and
Yeah.
Dr. Abrahamane from Russia has answered all the questions. And congratulations, Dr. Abrahamane.
Doctor,
Abrahamane.
I'll
That's the
announce. I'll announce.
Ajay, we are running about 20 minutes late in the other session.
Okay, so we'll stop here. I'll stop the case discussion here because as it is, we are now running out of time. There are a lot of cases, but some other time, Zishan.
Sure, we can have another session.
Okay, so where do I announce Dr. Abramino?
Yeah. From
So
Russia.
let Professor Shroff do the honors.
Sorry, this is about the questions which were put up to the resident, right, Nishan?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And who is the gentleman? Why don't you give a little, is there some background information available? Where is he from?
We don't have any background. He's from Russia. Maybe a
Right.
resident, Dr. Abrahamane. He has answered all the questions and he was right in all the answers.
And this was 5 questions, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, we should congratulate him obviously for doing it, and this is probably, he must have paid good attention to the talks. So well done. In fact, well done all the residents who attended. I think you have more than 300 attending this session,
Yes, sir.
and I'm sure you'll see the feedback. Hopefully, the feedback will be valuable and useful for the next time when you plan this session.
Yeah.
The problem with didactic kind of sessions are sometimes it can get boring, but I think all the speakers have done extremely well and kept the knowledge level very, very high. I think it's been very useful. I've intermittently been attending it because, as I said, I have another session going on simultaneously somewhere else. So, but overall, I think it has been a good, experience even for some of us who are already in this field for very long. There's always a new learning to take back home, even for us. When we come to the sessions, despite being in this field for so long, there's always some new tip or new point which you take back home. So it's a learning for everyone. But we have obviously pitched this the whole session at a level where the residents and the postgraduates would benefit more. So all the very best, and thank you again to Dr. Abraham for attending all those questions and doing so well. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
So I, on behalf of all the faculty, I thank iTrue and Eurogroup for inviting us to be here. And I thank Vikas, Jamal, Professor Anish, and Professor Shroff, and Dr. Rajiv Alochna to have participated with their wonderful talks and as panelists in the session on complications. Thank you very much. With that, please allow us to leave.
Thank you so much, everyone. So, nice.
Very good session.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Ishan,
We'll be
anything
sending
else?
a feedback form. We'll be sending a feedback form. Once they answer the feedback and give us a feedback, we'll be giving a certificate to all the participants. Thank you all. Thanks to all the faculty. It was a wonderful session.